Right, for a chat on the ongoing efforts to address corruption and human rights abuses within Nigeria's correctional facilities, we're now joined by Dr. Agomoh, Panel Secretary, Independent Investigative Panel on alleged corruption and other violations against the correctional facilities. Thank you very much for joining us on Newsnight. I mean, it is important that, you're calling for medical care, improved medical care for inmates as a major pressing need. But there are other issues. Let's talk about the systemic failures that have contributed largely to the state of affairs in Nigerian prisons. Like they say, the way a nation treats her prisoners is a reflection of that society. What are the systemic failures that have, led to this situation?
Oh, thank you very much for the question. I think there are a lot of it, and I think the part of the major issue is one, the fact where we do not comply with the principles. So, for example, custodial centers are supposed to be used as a measure of last resort, meaning you would have tried other means. Right. But when you have something that almost looks like an obsession with imprisonment, and this therefore can let us understand, when you look at the people who are in custody, who are in detention facilities, you will understand the point I'm making. So when you have a lot of people who are there who are innocent, many people who are minor offenders, and of course there are people who are serious offenders, so there is overuse of imprisonment, and that's why we have a disproportionate number of them that have not even been convicted. So because of the fact that everybody, the courts, everybody just keeps using that facility. And so that means that every facility that there is overstretched. So part of the problem is what happens upstream. So from the law enforcement agencies to the prosecuting agencies to the adjudicating agencies, that is the court, and every other person that plays harm. So that's one bit. The second thing is that it is obvious that we have not, as a nation, prioritized this issue around this. And I think part of it is maybe because they are locked up. We have this feeling that, we are not bothered.
They're not part of the society.
We don't need them.
But there's a problem because we don't understand that there is a very thin line between custody and outside. So everyone who you have in custody, one day comes out, one day goes in, and things like that. So it's very fluid. The world is very fluid in that sense. Right. So what you need to know, and I keep saying, if people don't even like the concept of supporting correctional service, for the sake of our own security, because everyone you find in custody, one day is going to come out. Right. So why will you do that to yourself as a nation, where you put people who are innocent, who then get to become more contaminated, and where you have a place so congested that the correctional service cannot even do the required regime, processes in terms of rehabilitation and all that as what they should do. So in terms of systemic thing, it's about the issue of controlling the inflow, those who come in, and how long they stay. And then, of course, the issue of facilities.
So it does beg the question. I mean, this panel is the third public hearing of the investigative panel. And one will ask the question, overcrowding, indefinite legal delays, financial strain, and all the other issues you have mentioned still persist. So the question is why, despite this investigation, despite the clamor for reforms, we've changed the names, why do these problems still persist?
The simple answer to that, because we have failed to implement the law that we have set up. A critical line, almost a critical shift happened in Nigeria on the 31st of July 2019, when the then president signed into law the Nigerian Correctional Service Bill into law. That piece of legislation is so transformational. And I just give you a very simple example. Go to the objective of that piece of legislation. 4 major things that are stated there. And for those who can have access to it, it's section 2, subsection 1, A, B, C, D. The first thing it says is that this new law is to enable Nigeria as a country comply with international human rights standards and good correctional practices. The second, it says it is to provide an enabling platform for the implementation of non-custodial measures, which is community corrections. The third, to ensure that we promote corrections, reformation, rehabilitation, and things. And then, of course, the other part, which is the fourth, is about the issue of those who haven't been convicted. And for each of these provisions, there are things to be done. Now, let me take just one.
Okay.
That's second one that talks about non-custodial measure. What it's saying is that instead of government keeping people who don't need to be in facility, they're feeding them, that you should use alternatives to imprisonment. But we have that. The whole of Section 2 of that law provides how you can do it.
Do
but
we know
not
what
single
those
penny.
alternatives are?
One is community service, which means if you commit an offense, pay back to the community. They shouldn't be feeding you government money. You go and work without pay. There's one that they call probation, which is the issue about you have committed an offense, but because there are certain reasons you committed it, they will say, okay, we won't put you in correctional center. But you would attend to those risks. So, for example, if you are using drugs, they say go and do rehabilitation of drugs. If you have anger management, they say go for anger management course. If you have not...
What's the most shocking thing you have seen in this investigation? Because we also had, day one, we had the issue about juveniles and adults overcrowding in the same place. What's the most shocking thing you have seen in the correctional centers in Nigeria? That is baffling and mind, heartbreaking.
I have been to over 150 correctional centers in more than 32 countries. I have visited correctional center more than 1,000 times, different ones. What I can tell you is what you see in Nigeria is almost close to countries coming out of war. So the likes of facilities in Democratic Republic of Congo, in Burundi is what you are seeing. And I just gave you that example, and when I said you have the community correction alternative to custody, and you have not budgeted 1 naira, not a penny, since 2019 that you have passed a law. Something that's supposed to help you as a country. So
we could spend all night, having this conversation, and it would be very, very enlightening. But Dr. Uju Agomoh, thank you so much for your work, and hopefully something good comes out of your panel findings. She's the panel secretary of the independent investigation panel that's looked into the state of Nigerian custodial services. Thank you very much.
Thank you.